Lesson 5. Out of unity you arise. The return to unity is your destiny. The mind discovers the path of return while the heart provides the key to each stage along the way. Dear friend, active symbolism. The word active symbolism. When we approached the notion of space-time densification, we did not specify, as it seemed obvious, that space is the passive part and time the active part. In fact, when we spoke of symbolism, we only mentioned space, that is, the passive part. The active part deals with the word because the word's vibrations belong to the domain of time. We are leaving the domain of the line and entering that of vibrations. The word can be considered the tool of active symbolism. Passive symbolism, which we just studied, is a tool for the teaching of nature's laws. Active symbolism, on the other hand, no longer intends to teach. This should have already happened, but to have an action on nature's forces through resonance. In this respect, only natural magic allows us to have an influence on our energies, those of nature and those of the invisible. Our energies are for our initiatory advance, the energies of nature to free our path. Magic functions by using active symbols, which are harmonics of the word at different levels. The word, we should understand correctly the significance of the influence of the word. In the beginning, everything is energy, that is, vibrations. The word of the Absolute creates primordial air. The word of the Logos, the apex of the manifest, creates nature from Lesson 5 primordial/air. Invisible and visible nature is therefore the result of the primordial word at different levels. In the beginning was the Word. Gospel of St. John. The human word, in a sense, is the original word but reduced. In man's physical body only the organ of speech can create and utter sonorous vibrations in the form of phonemes. If man has symbol vibrations at his disposal, that is, sonorous images, which resemble the high vibrations of primordial air, he is in turn capable, through resonance, of having an effect on the elements of the invisible, that is, he can practice natural magic, which is one of the evolutionary tools. Action of the symbols. Before we continue, we should specify that the symbols we studied in the previous lesson have a definite effect despite their passive space characteristic. We shall illustrate their effect through an analogy. Take a black stone resting on some ice in the sun. The black stone normally doesn't produce heat, but under the effect of the sun, it stores the solar heat and returns it. Therefore there is ice melting just around the stone. In the same way, the symbol, here the black stone, tuned to an energy, here the sun, acts as a receiver and transmits the energy to the closest operator, here the ice. This should help to better understand the scale of passive symbolism. To be very clear, let's take again the drawing of the pentagon associated with level 5, for example. The operator who concentrates on this symbol hopes to receive, through the symbol, the reinforced energies of Mars. In effect, this planet's energies are concentrated in the following forms, with varying effects depending on the forms, and in order to receive them, the operator must create the corresponding resonance by means of his inner work. We know that symbolism is a code which is at once accessible to the conscious and the unconscious. It is a transition between two worlds, and that is why we concentrate on its components. Of course, the worth of all symbolism lies in the archetypal values of its components, a subject which we won't be able to develop in this lesson. Active symbols differ from passive symbols in that they are a source of energy and their effect is dependent upon their structure. They transmit their own energy to the receiver, on which we hope to have an effect. These active symbols essentially work through vocalization, as we mentioned. Therefore, in order to be effective, the emitted sound must obey a certain number of rules. As everything in nature is vibrations, it is good to explain the mechanisms at play in esoteric vocalization. The resonance phenomenon, harmonic resonance, is the key to this subject. To physically experiment with it, let's take a piano. If you vibrate the string of the same note but at a different octave, the sound which is emitted evokes the same impression or the same feeling. In the same way, if you strike the key of a low C on the piano, the other strings of the other C notes will vibrate. This phenomenon occurs throughout nature. This is the essential key to this lesson. Another example, which is well known about the vibratory effects arising during resonance, is that of the crystal glass which breaks when someone sings certain notes at an appropriate frequency. Finally, as a last example, the effects of music on the psyche. Music is not expressed through an intellectual code as is speech, it affects us through the resonance produced by the emitted vibrations on various elements of our psyche. The effect can even attain a level of physical perception, for example, at the level of the solar plexus. For all practical purposes, here are some rules of resonance in music. Its phenomenon is general throughout nature. 1. The emission of the vibration of 100 will induce bodies whose proper vibration is 200, 300, 400 etc. to vibrate, through resonance. The resonance always has an effect on a number which is a whole multiple of the emitted frequency. 2. Two frequencies of vibrations which blend give a sum, frequency, and a difference, frequency. For example, 100 and 130 give a vibration of 100 plus 130 equals 230, and 1 of 130, 100 equals 30. 3. The frequencies double with each octave of vibrations, that is, 1 times 2 equals 2, 2 times 2 equals 4, 4 times 2 equals 8, 8 times 2 equals 16, 16 times 2 equals 32, 32 times 2 equals 64, etc. vibrations per second. This number 2 does not modify the character of the vibration but impels its evolution. An interesting fact you should be aware of: the level at which we pass from the world of matter to the world of spirit is situated around the 80th octave. As an aside, we should mention that the Pythagorean school claims that the basic frequency for the Earth is 1 cycle per second. A study of the cycles, Lesson 6, leads us to believe this claim to be accurate, provided that the second used is the solar second. Its duration is a function of the duration of the solar day. The solar day equals the time flowing between sunrise and sunset, changing each day, divided by 12, 60 times 60. Search for the accurate frequency of vocalization. We find ourselves in the same situation as the individual who wishes to transmit a message to someone who possesses a radio receiver tuned to a fixed frequency. The transmission can only occur if the sender tunes his transmitter to the frequency of the receiver. In the same way, for the symbol vibrations, we must find the correct frequency which will resonate with the point or the organ we wish to activate. Vocalized sound is actually a complex sound which is comprised of several vibratory frequencies. Its numerical combination is given by the consonant and the vowel composing it. The high/low quality of the sound does not vary the numerical combination but shifts its point of resonance. Using different vocalizations, high or low, we can find the adequate resonance. If the vocalization is musically accurate, there is harmony beyond the visible world. If the frequency, high/low, of vocalization is accurate, there is a resonance in one of man's psychic centers. This frequency differs for each being, and for each being, it also varies in time, even if very little. The vocalization consonant determines the effect you seek. Examples: R reinforces M, calms L, has an effect of expansion, in general the expansion of the perception of a psychic center. B has an effect of duality. C, K, Q have the effect of knowledge, of evolutionary pressure. P, V, F have the effect of involutionary pressure. The added vowel influences the choice of the level within the center concerned. The classical sequence of vowels is A, E, I, O, U. It is related to the scale of levels. Moreover, we know that the blending of vowels and consonants, the basis of our writing, either gives fixed or volatile sounds. If we vocalize a vowel like A or a blend of vowels like U, we can hold the sound as long as we have the breath, for the sound remains identical to itself. It is a fixed sound. If we vocalize a sound made of the blending of a vowel and a consonant, and the vowel precedes the consonant as in A, etc. the sound can be held. It still is a fixed sound. If the vowel follows the consonant as in ra, ma, the complete sound cannot be held. For instance, in ra the r quickly decreases and only the vowel a remains. Therefore the sound ra is volatile. The volatile sound has on nature a stronger action power than the fixed sound. However, a fixed sound is interesting because if it is vibrated with a sliding frequency, with practice one feels it when one attains the right frequency, the one which suits us for this sound. This frequency will be the same for the volatile sound which accompanies it. In other words, if we find the frequency of R we also have that of Ra. This action of the fixed and volatile sound is particularly remarkable in some names. Let's take the word L, she in French, which relates to cosmic Eve. E is the vowel of the being. L is space in extension. L is the fixed sound of space expanding. La is a volatile sound which doesn't last. It is the sound of space which comes back onto itself and disappears. L is the expansion of the universe. La is the contraction of the universe. Consequently, the word L symbolizes the expansion, contraction of the finite universe. Another almost identical explanation could be presented for the word Allah. The difference comes from the fact that the vowel E concerns man whereas the vowel A concerns the primary energy. Thus, the word Allah symbolizes the expansion-contraction of the energy, but at level 1. The vocalization only functions with man because the sound only actually activates in the body the organs which are capable of retransmitting the frequency to the level of the invisible. If a cassette can be a guide in vocalization, it is nothing else. We assert that only living organs can retransmit in the temporal non-physical planes of the invisible. If the vocalization accomplishes its goal, and this often requires patience and practice, we can verify the results with various signs. There is a definite effect in the chosen psychic center comparable to the effect of music. There is an objective sensation of energy in this center. There is a feeling or an impression of calm, well-being, fulfillment, strength, harmony etc. sensations about which you have an absolute certainty. Practical application of the word. The esoteric name. Each being on earth has an esoteric name, which starts at the time of entry into duality for the evolutionary journey. Man receives a name which is in fact an image of the eternal vibration, his being. All men do not receive the same name, but all the names are equivalent, as a very function of the principles of universal justice. Simultaneously following the increase of the plane's density during the course of involution, the name will solidify and for each level or plane man will have a new name. Knowing one or several of these names is an important step for the student because the accurate vibration will create a profound resonance in him between the physical level and the inner level. The name vibrated corresponds to the inner level. Warning: in no event whatsoever should you communicate your name S to anyone, should you discover them. If you write it or any of them, nothing should indicate that either them are actually the real name, S. To communicate one's esoteric name to someone else is a betrayal of the inner being and can stop the evolution for the duration of an incarnation. As a matter of fact, each one of us has an esoteric name for each level of the creation. Pronouncing one of these words provokes a kind of invocation in our inner self at the level corresponding to the name. If we reveal our name to someone else, we give him access to our inner self, which is not a prudent move. If someone cannot find one of your inner names on his own, he doesn't possess the wisdom to use them. If, on the other hand, he has the wisdom, then he should not ask you because he can find them by himself. Search for the name, Figure 1. P.13. The search takes place by vibrating the corresponding names at the different levels. In many occult treatises, it is stated that Hebrew is the language of the angels. That is why we chose Hebrew names for this work but written in Latin characters. We have said that all is in everything, that the 4 elements and the 9 other levels exist in each level. We also said that the levels were gathered in each world and that an element is assigned to each one. Levels 1, 2, 3 constitute the higher world of fire levels 4,5, 6 constitute the solar world of air levels 7, 8,9 constitute the lunar world of water level 10 constitutes the world of the earth. Each element thus corresponds to one of the 4 worlds mentioned above, but each of the 4 worlds is also present in each level, through the element. See Figure #1. Figure 1 shows the 10 names for each of the 4 elements. The 4 columns of names conform to the Hebrew Kabbalah. Left, the column of fire A, then that of air, which are the columns of invisible life. Then, the columns of water V and earth V, which are the columns of matter. Below we find the symbols of the 3 alchemical principles. Fire and air from the columns of life give the alchemical sulfur, the soul of things, the animating energy. Water and earth from the columns of matter give the alchemical salt, the body's matrix. Air and water give the philosophical mercury of the alchemists, or the spirit, the messenger of the gods. He is the link between soul and body. It allows the passage of the energies from the higher self to the self of the earth, and thus makes possible genuine initiation. Oratory work. Proposed exercise, the 40 invocations. Usual procedure. Place yourself preferably facing the mirror. Aim, the descent of the energy. To create one's own unitary energy flow from level 1 to 10. Application, through the resonance of invocations, to bring forth in your dreams the reappearance of your own esoteric names in the different levels. Advice: only perform this exercise after the completion of the polygons, or the planetary symbols, meditation and the levels meditation, in the numerical sequence. Absolute rules for the use of these names: in all levels, never vibrate a name alone. Always vibrate to names in a row and only 2 at a time. Vibrate in the 3 following combinations only: fire, air, water, earth, air, water. First phase, first vibrate fire, air, necessarily starting with level 1 and then following the numerical sequence down to 10. This should preferably be performed on a Saturday morning at sunrise. Do it again the 2 following Saturdays, still with the fire, air elements. Second phase, vibrate water, earth, necessarily starting with level 1 following the numerical sequence, still 10. This should be performed on the 4th Saturday at sunrise. Perform it again on the next 2 Saturdays, still with the water, earth elements. We accumulate in this manner the invisible energies of the soul on the one hand, and on the other the invisible energies of the body. We should now attempt to increase the transparency between the 2. This occurs in the following way. Third phase, vibrate air, water, again necessarily starting with level 1 following the numerical sequence, still level 10. This should be performed on the 7th Saturday at sunrise. Perform it as well the next 2 Saturdays, again with the air, water elements. Closing, proceed as usual. Be careful. If we take into account the language of the angels, and the names we used, your esoteric name could be revealed in Hebrew characters. You would then need to transliterate them into Latin characters. Figure 2, p. 14. Do not forget that Hebrew is read from right to left, otherwise it could lead you to reverse your own name. Last remark: you cannot access the names which are located in levels higher than your present level of evolution. If one day you feel discomfort during this work, you should start the first phase again, the fire air phase. It is good to perform it once every 6 months. The best time would be around the solstices and equinoxes. This practice causes a sort of self-healing. Finally, the 40 invocations exercise should reinforce in you those elements which are in deficit in the different levels. This rebalancing should bring about a better contact with your inner being. Ora et labora. The philosophers of nature. Appendix and figures. Appendix. The lost word or the forgotten word. Excerpt from LPN. Figure 1, the 40 invocations. Figure 2, the Hebrew alphabet. Appendix. The lost word or the forgotten word. Excerpt from the Little Philosopher of Nature. One day, Buddha met the gods, who told him, "Tell us your wish and we shall grant it." Buddha replied, "Oh, gods, give me the meaning of words and I shall know all things." Let's examine the word, the language and knowledge, partially, of course, because if we knew the word completely we would be back in the eternal empire. According to the mystics, there was on earth a long time ago an original language for which we now search under the name of the lost word. The true word, that of the fiat lux of the Bible, is not a word uttered by an old man seated upon his throne. The word, in truth, is the energy ceaselessly radiated by the formless being. The fiat lux, in a sense, is but the submission of the vibrations of this energy to the law dictated by the being, harmony. The beings, the Elohim issued from it, along with those who use this energy to create the worlds, the bodies of men and the light of the sun, which is but a pale reflection of the fiat lux energy. Even time, space, and form result from this order of the non-manifest energy which, without this operation, could only appear or exist as the void. This energy is vibration only, and consequently all that exists is a conglomerate of vibrations. Our body, our flesh, our blood are but vibrations, and therefore subjected to the first law of vibrations, harmony. The word harmony generally awakens a notion of music or art, but harmony is actually deeper and more encompassing and reaches much beyond the aesthetic aspects to which its domain is generally confined. A chemical reaction, a nuclear explosion, or our health are consequences of the primary harmony. However, music is easily accessible and one of the easiest ways to explain what harmony is. Imagine a piano keyboard which is very, very long. Its scales extend infinitely. With each G note of a new octave, for example, the number of vibrations doubles. Soon, after 5 successive Gs, we no longer hear them, and for us humans the notes seem without effect. Yet, if we could fashion a piano to this image, this is practically impossible, and if we were really steadfast, there would come a time when, in striking a key, we wouldn't create a sound but vibrations which could perturb radio waves, television waves, and then radar waves. The next key could give off heat, and finally after 42 Gs following our original G, of 384 radiated vibrations, a red light would radiate. Imagine that our keyboard could expand even more. There would no longer be sound nor light, but a key which would create hydrogen and a key which would create oxygen. If we were to make a chord of these 2 notes, water could be created. Every created thing is thus only a chord of notes on the universal keyboard. If we produce the same chord in the audible scales of the sound, we'll have an image of the vibrations of the thing, and this would be its true name in the primitive universal language, in the language of the lost word. In the same way, as we just saw, G is the note which corresponds to the red light, and a sound which would contain the same numbers as and a would be the true name of water. Let's examine the case of a man who has an even partial inner awakening. Initiated man is a transformer of energy. A layman who pronounces a word disturbs the air of the physical world, but his word has little resonance in the higher frequencies. On the other hand, the initiate has re-established the links between the different levels of his consciousness, that is, he re-established contact with the various vibratory levels of the universe, and the more he advances on the initiatory path, the better the contacts between his various inner planes. Therefore, contrary to the layman, when the initiate talks, he disturbs the high vibratory levels, and if his word conforms to the original language, he will then create the very thing designated by the word, because by the word, through harmony, will radiate the vibrations which are the thing itself.